Well, I definitely had another video planned for this week, but I really wanted to talk about this Steven Crowder Daily Wire contract snafu that's happened in the last 24 hours at the time of this recording. So this coming from Outkick, and I'm going to explain why we're looking at Outkick in just a second, because that's part of this whole story. Daily Wire offered podcast host Steven Crowder $50 million inside the dispute. So for those of you who didn't see, what happened was yesterday, again, the time of the recording, Steven Crowder did a video where he exposed a contract that he had been offered to basically take a show to another platform and some of the specifics there within. And he outlined a lot of the problems that he had with that. And a lot of people started speculating, who was it that sent him this contract? Was it the Daily Wire, which is another big conservative outfit? And today, again, day of the recording, the Jeremy Boring of the Daily Wire, the senior vice president, came out and said, yeah, it was us. And he read line through line what the contract was. And I personally found it as just a fascinating insight into how this stuff works. Now, you know, as working as an illustrator writer, I've signed contracts like these before, and recently, as I've been having to put out my own stuff and I collaborate with people, I've had to get contracts like these made up and given to people before. So I know a little bit about. I mean, this is obviously way beyond the scale that I would ever, or that I operate in. Maybe someday, who knows if I'm lucky? Doubt it, but. This was a mega deal. As you can see, $50 million. And as Jeremy Boring of the Daily Wire said in his original address, this was like the opening offer. This was the, hey, here's what we're thinking, knowing that a higher number was going to be coming back, because this was the beginning of a negotiation. So one of the reasons I want to talk about this, and one of the reasons we're looking at Outkick right now, which is a very well-known news outlet, is because reporting on this is really bad. The reporters are acting more like playground gossip starters than actual news people. So let's just go back here and look at, you just type in Steven Crowder on Google and go to news. Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro in right-wing media feud that just got ugly. Kind of. 50 million offer is actually slavery, according to right-wing YouTuber Steven Crowder gripes. He didn't actually say that, so that's dishonest. That's misleading. Steven Crowder lashes out at big con of conservative media for allegedly colluding with tech companies like YouTube. To be fair, he did say that, but there's a lot of context there. And then Daily Wire offered Steven Crowder $50 million, and then Steven Crowder, many of those in charge of the right-wing leaning media are actually at odds with what's best for you. Again, that headline lacks a lot of context. But let's talk about what he said, and I encourage you to watch both videos. I mean, they're both long. I think Steven Crowder's was about a half hour, a little over that. The Daily Wire's Jeremy Boring's video was almost an hour long, but it's because he goes line item through a contract. And for anybody who's in any kind of creative space, I think it's good to see how these work and why these work, and kind of the insight of, these are opening offers. A lot of the time when you get a contract like that, I mean, let's face it, if the normal person got a contract with a $50 million payday attached to it, you're just going to sign it, and you're not going to read what's in it. It's good that Steven Crowder read what's in it and had a problem with it. I think he, and I will go into who I think is more right or wrong in this as we go on, but he found things that he had a serious problem with, and we're in this kind of this airing of a dirty laundry type of situation. But it is ugly in the sense that it's out there, and you kind of look, especially if you're a fan of Daily Wire and or Steven Crowder, you're kind of in the position of, I wish they hadn't done this. I don't want to see this fight being public, and there is a bit of, we're watching something that we shouldn't be seeing. This should have been something that was done behind closed doors, but at the same time, I'm happy it's out there because it gives us the chance to actually see the inside of how this stuff works, and the transparency, I think, is really good. So one of the things, let's address some of these headlines here. It is ugly. So 50 million is actually slavery, no, it's not. Huffington Post, you are the weakest link. Goodbye. So no, that's not what he said. Steven Crowder pointed out in the contract that as for the term of the contract, which is 4 years with a 2-year possible extension, Daily Wire would get ownership of the show's social media presence, would get ownership of the content that he creates, would get ownership of kind of like his customer mailing list and subscription list would transfer over to the Daily Wire. They would control his merch store, as well as he was required to do some extra content for him. He had to show up at their once a month kind of behind all hosts behind the scenes thing, and he had to produce a documentary for him once a year and do some promotional stuff. So these are just all the other hosts at the Daily Wire. They do all this stuff. So it's kind of, he was going to have to be with the rest of them, as well as do ad reads more than he does currently on his show. So that's, in his point of view, it's like, what, you own everything that I'm doing. That was kind of the point that he was making. You own the social media, you own the mailing list, you own the merch store, you own all this, and that's true, that's in the contract. But at the same time, again, let's go back to the dollar amount. $50 million starting number. So the Daily Wire is buying this. This is what they're getting for their money. They're buying your content is what they're doing, and they're putting it out under their label, their brand, their banner. So that's not slavery, that's capitalism. That's how it works. You're going to be the talent. This is your paycheck. You're going to make this money. They're going to own it, and that's how it's going to work. That's what they're writing the check for. So I think Steven Crowder was off when he called it, slavery. That's not what it is. And honestly, like you said, this is a negotiation. If you don't want to do those extra things, come back and say, I don't want to do the extra things. There was also a clause in there that he had to work. He had to produce so many shows a year, 192, I believe it was. 192 shows a year had to be produced. That was the minimum. That's what they're getting. So he said, well, Steven Crowder went on his video and said, well, what if I get sick or get in a car crash, or for whatever reason some emergency happens and I can't make the show? Then there was a penalty involved. It was $100,000 per instance penalty for shortcoming, for doing as few little. Well, again, let's look at it from the other point of view, because I could see how it would seem that way. If you are at a job and your employer is telling you, regardless, you're going to have to be at work X many days regardless. I don't care what the situation is. And if you miss it, then you're going to get penalized. That does sound kind of harsh. But then from the other side is, we are writing a big check for this many shows. It'd be like if you went to the store and bought a dozen eggs, and then you get home and there's 8 eggs in the carton but you paid for 12. Are you just going to say, oh, shucks, I wish they would have put 12 eggs in here? Or are you going to get upset about it and maybe even go back to the store or point out, you sold me 8 eggs, I paid for 12. Where are my other 4? That's what that is. Call it a penalty, call it a deduction, whatever you want. That's why that was there. And that's fairly standard, I would think. And again, it's negotiable. If Steven Crowder looked at that number and didn't think he could bear that number, come back with another number. Say, I can't do 192 and guarantee 175, and we'll see what we can do beyond that. So yeah, this $50 billion, this actually slavery comment is completely out of context. Don't pay attention to that. Next, Steven Crowder lashed out at a big con of conservative media alleging colluding with big tech companies. Yes and no. So he did come up with the name The Big Con, and he's kind of using this as a double entendre. He's saying the big con is in big conservative media, and big con as it's a con, it's a front. They're not what they say they are. That's kind of the double meaning of this term here. So that's what he says when he says big con. When he says are alleging with tech or colluding with tech companies, not really. So his point was to say, one of the clauses in the contract was that if something happens to where they launch a boycott against the sponsors of the Steven Crowder show, as hypothetically owned by Daily Wire, that results in him losing 50% or more of his sponsorships, that they are going to now pay him less than the original agreed upon amount based on that boycott. So Steven Crowder's point was, especially as a guy who gets boycotts called on him frequently, is you're just telling these people that tactic wins, that if you boycott my show, I will be punished. So you're in his mind, his point of view, you are empowering this group, whatever group of people that doesn't like me, to boycott my sponsors, to boycott your sponsors, and to get my show penalized. That was Steven Crowder's point when he says you're colluding with big tech companies, because as we know, Daily Wire and Crowder they've tried to deplatform him. They've demonetized Loud Earth Crowder. They've been shadow banned, all this other stuff. So by giving into this movement, he says you're colluding with the tech companies, and you're colluding with these cancel mobs that are out there that are after him all the time. And I can see where, from his point of view, that is actually correct, what he's saying. Because if they know that if I boycott every sponsor of his show and I can just get half of them to leave, that it's going to hit him in the pocketbook, and it's going to upset the balance, and it's going to ruin the show, and potentially maybe even end the show. So that's a very valid point of view. I would kind of put out the counterpoint of that's not a clause that those people would have known about had you not aired it on your show, but there may be other ways that they could have found out that's how it works. So let's look at that. Let's look at that clause. So again, let's look at it from the other side, because when the Daily Wire put out their video, they talked about it from the other side, and their point is, well, if a boycott has been launched against you and it has been successful, they aren't making any money either. So it's not like you lose money and you're penalizing you. No, the Daily Wire is already losing money in sponsorship and advertising money. And so it's trickling downhill. It's affecting you too. So that's a lose-lose. And yeah, Steven Crowder's afraid it's going to happen to him. And to be fair, again, he's been attacked on YouTube. YouTube has deplatformed him. And there was even a clause in the contract that said if you are deplatformed, then you're going to get a 25% annual reduction on your payments, which he's already deplatformed from YouTube. But as Jeremy Boring even addressed that just YouTube would have been scratched from that list. So, because we're not going to start from a position where we're playing from behind. I would also say, and this is just this wasn't said in their video, but this is kind of what I was thinking. I was thinking to myself, if I'm in the position that Steven Crowder's been in, where somebody comes after him and is attempting to deplatform him, or there's a content strike getting hit against him from one of the platforms that carries his show, I would think that the amount of resources that would come to bear to defend you, coming from the Daily Wire, which is a fairly large media corporation, is probably more significant than Steven Crowder has had to call on in the past. So I would think that the threat of this happening maybe would alleviate a little bit from this deal. I could be wrong on that. That's me being speculative, to be fair. But I do think that having that kind of power to bring at your defense may be better. I know it's with the Blaze, and the Blaze probably has resources too. I just doubt it's as significant as the Daily Wire's. So when it comes to this headline, yes and no. This lacks a lot of context, and it's clickbait, so that's fair. But still, I don't want people to judge the situation by headlines. Daily Wire offered Steven Crowder $50 million. This was the headline I decided to use because it was it was kind of neutral in the sense that they're just trying. That is a fact. Jeremy Boring did show hold up there he is in the picture holding up the contract. And he went into the dollar amounts. We offered him a $50 million paycheck to come on over. A huge number. I mean, think about it. Think about $50 million. That's more money than most of us are going to see in our lifetimes. And that was his starting number. Knowing that he was probably going to have to go higher, that's crazy to me. So that's what that headline was about. And then Steven Crowder, many of those in charge of the right-leaning media, are actually at odds with what's best for you. Now, let's be honest for a second, especially when you're dealing with like Huffington Post and Media Matters, and they're saying they're taking hot takes from his video, obviously lacking context. And again, this is clickbait, so that's what they do. But let's be fair. One of the outstanding narratives that's been going on in culture now, or in our society for a long time now, is that conservative media has voices in certain places, on the radio, and when it comes to alternative media. And there is a concerted effort to shut that down because it has a rival. It's not that this is like inside deep state lizard people controlling everything type of situation. There's a rivalry. There's conservatism, there's liberalism, there's all the other philosophies out there. And if one can get a foothold over the other and weaken that voice, they're gonna do it. So don't come back at me and say, oh, conspiracy theory, nobody's trying to shut down conservative speech. Yes, they are, because conservative speech has rivals. And if a rival can take down a rival, is going to do it. And a lot of people are using this as an attempt to do that. I'm glad the transparency is out there. I want people to see this for what it is. And honestly, this kind of thing is a teaching moment for a lot of people. Even I learned a lot about, contracts and why things are in there. Because, I mean, let's face it, a lot of the stuff that I use, I had prepared for me. And, you fill in the information that you need and all this other stuff. I don't write these myself. You have a company or a service or somebody do it for you. So it was neat that I can maybe look at this a little bit more informed eyes as I'm going forward. But yeah, so Steven Crowder was offered $50 million. Now, the question is, who do I think is right and who do I think is wrong? And I don't like necessarily using those terms because, and I'm not trying to just kind of skirt the fence here. I do kind of have an opinion. I'll get into it, but I do want to say I think both parties are correct. I think there was misunderstanding on one point and maybe a lack of understanding of where the other side was coming from. But I do think that definitely this probably could have been resolved through maybe just negotiations rather than, as the Daily Wire's video stated, they sent them the offer and then the phone call that they got back was, you need to scrap this offer and completely start over. Yeah, it's garbage. And then they threw numbers that the Daily Wire wasn't willing to pay. So there was no really negotiation. It was one offer, then done. And had they gotten a chance to actually sit at the table and talk this out, I think they would have seen eye to eye on more of the contract's innards than they did. And the fact that Steven Crowder went out and aired it publicly, well, that kind of may seem like it's in poor taste, and maybe it is, or maybe it's not professional, maybe it's not. Like I said, I'm glad it's out there so that we can see it and we can see the inner workings and we can talk about it. As it stands, I kind of side with Daily Wire on this. I'm not saying that Steven Crowder is bad or wrong or anything. It's just, as I kind of watched both videos, gave it a lot of thought, gave it all the benefit of the doubt, I understand where Daily Wire is coming from, and it almost comes across that Steven Crowder's kind of looking for like a patron, somebody who will just front his show and bear the consequences or rewards, whatever comes from it. And that just can't work, especially when you're a guy who's as incendiary as Steven Crowder is. I mean, you've got to. I realize that Steven Crowder can say, you know my record, you know what you're getting into when you're buying in. Well, at the same time, he's got to understand his own record too, and the risk that anybody who buys in would be taking. And they're going to take whatever steps they can to, as best they can, protect themselves and shield themselves from that risk. And that's kind of what that's what all of these things that were built into the contract, whereas he gets subtractions in revenue if they lose advertising money, or if he gets deplatformed and they can't make money off of Spotify and off of iTunes and whatever else is out there, or if a boycott it takes all of his advertising money away in the Daily Wire and his show is making no money. If you have a show that's making no money, but you have a company that's paid $50 million with $12.5 million annually a year that they're a check that they're writing, they can't just write this money and throw it into a fireplace. That's basically what it is if they're buying an unprofitable show. So yeah, they're gonna put these and to be fair, they could have done a contract where if it could have said if these metrics aren't met, that the contract is terminated. I've seen contracts like that, where if you don't meet these minimum advertising dollars, if you can't keep these people happy, if you get deplatformed by more than, by one or more companies, then that's it. The contract is over and we just shred it. We just tear it up. That's not what this is. It's kind of a weird revenue sharing where it's like, okay, well, if you take a loss, then we're both going to take that loss. We're losing income. We're going to lose income from advertising money, but then you're going to lose income from what we're paying you. That's kind of sharing the burden in my point of view, and I think that's fair. And to his other point, as far as like owning so much of Steven Crowder's stuff, that's what they're buying. They're buying the brand. So you're going to be an asset of the Daily Wire. You're going to be well compensated for that. And then at the end of the term, all that stuff reverts back to you unless you want to renew it and keep going forward. But that's what they're writing that's what they're spending $50 million to do. Is you're going to be part of their portfolio now, just like their other hosts, just like Ben Shapiro and all the others. Your Daily Wire, you're part of the family now. So was wrong for him to refer to it as slavery. It was even more wrong for the Huffington Post to say that he declared it slavery when really there was a lot of caveats to that. But it's really not. It's capitalism. That's what it is. It's you are a talent. You produce a talented program. Somebody else would like that to be part of their family of programs, and they are going to spend the money to try to get you exclusive to them. That's what that is. And I think he was off base with his representation of that. So I think both of them were right. Steven Crowder was right as far as to go through his contract with a fine-tooth comb, to question the things like he did. Whether or not you think it was right for him to take it to the air like he did, that's a different statement, a different thing. Like I said, I think it's uncouth to do it, but I'm glad he did it because I find it fascinating personally. I hope you guys too, since I've done a whole video on it. I'm going to put it on YouTube. But I do have to say, if I had to level a verdict of who's right and who's wrong in this situation, it's not 100% either way, but we'll call it 60-40 in favor of the Daily Wire. I think the contract was pretty basic. I think there was a lot of room to where a lot of these problems that Steven Crowder has probably could have been ironed away. Or at least found a middle ground where everybody could have been, comfortable moving forward. And those negotiations never got to take place. And I think had those talks actually happened, this feud would not have happened. I think that common ground was a lot closer than they probably thought it was. But I think that based on the history that Steven Crowder has had producing his show, I can see why he was skeptical when he saw these things coming for him. I mean, if you're a guy who has experienced boycotts on a regular basis, who's been deplatformed by, the company who you trusted to carry your show, like has happened to him in the past, when you've had people come after you and then you start seeing in the contract that you're going to be penalized for it, it probably struck a nerve in him that I doubt the Daily Wire was expecting to strike or was even trying to. And that's because his experience and his, kind of his journey getting from where he was to where he is, has been different and has been unique, just like everybody else's is. But because of that, it's created a situation to where that kind of language and those kinds of restrictions were very, hit him in a spot that resulted in more of an angry and defensive response than just a calm response that would have allowed him to maybe just correct the situation. That's kind of my long-winded way of saying it, I guess. But what do you guys think of this? Do you, if you've watched both videos, or at least maybe just kind of heard about the situation, whose side do you fall on this? I mean, like I said, I think Steven Crowder made a lot of good points. He is right when he says, or he has a point when he says you're empowering the boycotters by saying that you'll penalize my show if they do it. But at the same time, like I said, that's maybe not information they would have had you not put your contract up on television or up on the internet. So I do want to know what you guys think. I want to know who you kind of, if the chips were to fall, who do you side with on this? Is the Daily Wire correct in what they did? Is Steven Crowder, do you stand with him and his kind of, take me as I am kind of an approach? Or do you think it's like me? It's probably somewhere in the middle, but I lean more to one side than the other as being correct. I do encourage you though, watch these videos. I think they're super. I think there's a lot of information here. It's very informative, especially for anybody who operates in a creative space, and you may someday find yourself getting one of these contracts put down in front of you. The kinds of things to look for, the kinds of and the kind of negotiating power that you really have and the expectation of the person offering you that contract. A lot of people think, I can't come back with a counter offer. They'll take the contract and walk away. No, a lot of the time they're expecting a counter offer. They're hoping you don't, because they're offering you the minimum of what they want to pay. He even said in the Daily Wire video, he gave them the lowest minimum number they expected he would accept, knowing that they would come out with more. And most of the time, that's the offer that you're given, is the lowest minimum number they hope to expect. Always remember that going into any negotiation, or even getting a new job, when they're offering you a salary, see if you can, maybe they offer you $20 an hour, ask for 21. If they say no, you could always just say, well, I'm negotiable. We'll readdress it down the road, however you want to put it. But the importance of negotiation is there, everyone. And that's one of the really cool lessons that I think came out of this whole ugly situation. And we'll talk about in the comments below. While you're down there, do all the usual stuff. Hit like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Obviously, I would love to have you here. And I'm going to leave it there. I will talk to you in the comments. See you then.